What's up, everybody? This is Jaron with REtipster.com. And today I have the privilege and honor of talking to Chris Gibson from Wild West Land Company out of Nevada. What's going on, Chris?
What's happening?
Man, so what we're doing today, guys, is we were thinking, who do we know who uses their land business as their primary source of income, and how do they structure their finances? How do they go about setting this amount aside for savings? What percentage do they live off of? We thought, like, who do we know who lives full time off their real estate business that we could ask and dive deep into that question with. And Chris was somebody that connected with me a couple months ago. I really, really liked his heart, his integrity, and his character. So I was just like, dude, let's get him on a camera and ask him some questions. So yeah, bro, tell me a little bit about your background. How long have you been doing land, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I've been doing land since the beginning of September of 2017. So we're coming up on, what is it, 10, 11 months now? I don't know. I can't do math. But yeah, I mean, the goal right away was to replace my income. And I've always kind of really felt like an entrepreneur on the inside, but I've ended up in positions where I've been doing, even manual labor, digging ditches and things like that. So, I've always sort of wanted to kind of spread my wings and fly, and I just never found anything that was really my jam. I started because I was flipping cars for a little bit. I heard about the land business, kind of got involved with some education, and, just picked it up pretty quickly and started rolling with it and pushing forward. Well, recently, a few months ago, my job kind of was, the company I was working for didn't really take off too quickly. And so the timing of it worked out to where I could just kind of barely support myself at the same time that, my job was, I was planning on leaving my job and that sort of thing. So the timing just kind of worked out really well, where I was just barely able to make it, but I made it happen. And then, since I've quit my job, I've had more time to work on the business, which has been great because I've been making more money and stuff like that too. So that's kind of the quick history of the land business so far for me, but it's just been great. It's just been, it's a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it. So
That's awesome. Well, first question on the list that I have for you, man. How many sources of income do you have currently? Or are you just solely living off of your land business?
So right now I'm just solely working on, living off the land business. And then my wife is a teacher as well. So we do have that income. But I think that the primary source of income is the land business right now.
Are you using her for medical insurance?
I will, because she's going to get that as a benefit through her new employer.
Okay.
Before that, we were basically paying out of pocket for medical insurance.
That's tough, man. Yeah,
It is.
I found a Christian alternative called MetaShare, and
I
it's
know.
cheaper, but it's kind of janky. I'll
We've
leave it at
looked
that.
into MetaShare, and there's I think Samaritan Ministries is the one we're really interested in. So we would do that, except for the fact that we get free healthcare as a benefit through her employer.
For
So
her stuff. Yeah.
if she at some point stops working, because we want to have a family soon. If she at some point stops working there, then we'll probably go with something like that, because it's just a better model, I think, than the healthcare industry, which is insane nowadays. But
So was it just you saw the opportunity in land and you were like, this is a way for me to get out of the 9 to 5. This is my way out of working kind of dead end jobs. So I'm just going to go for it. Or did you have like a certain amount of income in place that would kind of tide you over as you built the land business over time?
yeah, well, I was working a job consistently. I've always worked, and I've always had work to do. And so, yeah, the goal at first was, well, I'm going to start working on this because it's a way to make side cash. Because like I said, I was making side cash flipping cars, and I realized that there's a lot less risk doing this. There's still some risk, but you can mitigate that risk very well, and you can scale it. I only had so much room in my driveway for so many cars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had like 3 or 4 cars in my driveway at one time, and and you just run out of room. The good thing about land is it comes with its own parking spot, so you don't need a place to store it. So
That's
that's
awesome.
what worked out for me. And yeah, initially the goal was, I'm going to make some side cash. And before I even started, I was like, I want to do this as my full-time business. That was kind of the goal going into it. I would say, I probably thought about it for a couple of weeks, and I was like, I think I could do something like that full time. And yeah, so that pretty much from the get-go, that was the goal. But yeah, to get back to your question, I did have a steady source of income for the first 6 months or so or more. Yeah, around 6 or 7 months. I was still working at my previous job, so I had that income. And yeah, you do need a little bit of money to get started in this business, and it's probably a good idea while you're getting things rolling to continue to work a regular job and have an income. Unless you have a ton of money saved up, which is cool, then you may be able to jump in with both feet and commit yourself fully. But I'd say it's probably wise to test the waters, try it out, see if you like it. And that's the beauty of this business is you can start slow. It's not like you're opening a pizza shop where you have to have a building and you have to have like a cook and all this other stuff. You can start really slow. Buy one property, try to sell it, see what happens, see how you like it, learn some stuff. You may not even like it. You may not even want to do the business. So yeah, I definitely encourage everybody to keep your primary source of income. And then I've heard people say, some other people in the land community say, like, you want to quit your job like a year too late. You want to be really sure I hope that makes sense. Like, by the time you quit your job, you want to be like, yeah, I could have done this a year ago. For me, it didn't quite work out like that. And for me, it was kind of a leap of faith of, this is what I'm going to do. And still, after I was quitting my other job and deciding to move and stuff, I still thought maybe I should look for a job in this new area where I'm going to be staying. And, I did look for a job for a minute, and then I decided, you know what, I'm probably going to lose money if I work a regular job, because, yeah, I've been busy with my land business. I've been working at least 40 hours a week, sometimes less, sometimes more, but there's plenty of stuff to do, constantly learning and trying to make my business better. So that's the really long version of the answer.
No, honestly, I'm really glad you touched on that, Chris, because I think that's one of the best pieces of advice that people who are looking into starting their own business, getting into real estate,
Yeah.
that's one of the best pieces of advice that they can hear. Because something that really messed me up is after I left Simple Wholesaling, I was like, I'm just going to go gung ho and I'm going to do this. And I didn't really have a stable source of income, and it actually stunted the growth of my land business. It's kind of weird. I don't know how this worked, but since I started working with REtipster, now my land business is taking off again. And all I was doing was like focusing 100%. I don't know if it's just starting off or if it's just like a psychology thing because I have the piece of money coming in every month. But I think that, there's a lot of people out there that try to do the sexy thing of like, I'm going to be the starving entrepreneur, right? But it's not practical. It's much better to build something slow and make sure that it's sustainable before you quit.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely something to be said about trying to grow or trying to scale too quickly. There's definitely something to be said about that. And it's just something to be cautious of,
Yeah, man, 100%. Well, let's dive a little bit into kind of exact numbers if you're comfortable. So what was your like bottom line budget where you were like, okay, as long as I can get this amount of money, I'm going to be okay to justify quitting my job full time? And how many deals did you have to do in order to make that with overhead and all of that?
Well, because I have a mix of cash deals and terms deals, I was just kind of looking at the overall about how much am I making per month. And I had around 3,000 or 3,500 a month coming in from terms deals. And that's gross. That's not net. So net after advertising was probably half that. So like 1,500, 2,000, something like that. So basically, to answer your question, what I was looking for was I wanted to replace the income that I previously had. So, I was making around 45K a year. So divide that by 12, whatever that is. I was shooting for around 4,000 a month, something along those lines. Yeah. If I can make that, then I'll be comfortable. Now, to be honest, in the situation that I was in, I jumped out a little bit before that, I think. And I had made some cash deals. And so, it's kind of hard to average out cash deals when this is like your third, fourth, fifth cash deal or something like that. So it's kind of hard to determine, is this my actual monthly income? But, based on what I had sold for terms and for cash, I was just like, you know what, I feel comfortable with this. The timing feels right. And like I said, I still, when I was leaving that job, I still kind of thought maybe I should keep my eyes open for another job
Hmm.
just in case, just like so I can have that in my back pocket. I actually got a job opportunity. And, by the time all was said and done, and there was this background check thing involved, by the time all was said and done, I was like, hey, thanks for the opportunity, but at this point I have to decline because
Wow.
I would lose money if I were to take this job at this point. So yeah, that was really all it was for me, was just trying to replace my income, because I know that if I have $4,000 coming in a month, we can live comfortably between me and my wife's
Wow.
salary. Yeah.
So let's dive into how you structure your personal income in your business expenses. So obviously as a business, right, you have certain amount of money that goes to direct mail, certain amount
Mm-hmm.
that goes to, just kind of miscellaneous, like I'm hiring some guy off Craigslist to go take pictures for me,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. So how much money do you set aside for like marketing, for just the general overhead of your business? And then how much do you take home per month from that? Or are you just primarily living off of your terms deals? How do you structure?
Right now, I'm kind of in the mode of I do need to tighten things up and get things down to an exact percentage. I'm a big fan of the profit first system and really dialing in the numbers. But I heard someone say somewhere, I don't know where I heard this, if you make enough money, you don't have to budget. And so that's kind of been what my goal has been, is I'm just like trying to make as much as I can and work as hard as I can to get that income going. And I'm like, okay, this is what I've committed to spending this much on marketing. Percentage wise, I don't know if I have a percentage, but I'm spending around between 1,000 and 1,500 a month on marketing. And that's what I feel comfortable with. It seems like it's working for me so far. Of course, at some point I want to dial that in and get like an actual percentage of my income and really budget things out a little bit better. But, again, like if you have the margin in the properties you're selling, then you're going to end up, or if you just have the volume, either way, you're going to end up paying for everything. And as far as mailing costs, it's one of the biggest costs in this business, obviously. I mail when I need to. So when I'm ready to buy more property, I send out some mail. I may go a month without mailing anything because I have a bunch of property I want to get rid of. And then I may, just recently I sent out like close to 2,000 letters or more for 1 month. There's some costs there, but I always know kind of what my income is, and I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants in a sense. And even with my marketing and stuff, I don't always track the data the way that I should. I want to set things up better and
Mhm.
and tighten everything up and really understand the numbers. But a lot of it is just like, okay, this is a platform that works. I feel good about this. I'm going to continue doing this. I kind of have a mental picture of what seems to be working and what doesn't seem to be working. So as far as structuring the finances, were you asking how I pay myself as well,
Yeah,
or?
like did you pay yourself off of a
Yeah,
percentage, or is it just simply like, okay, I need to make $4,000 a month. So as
right,
long as like here are these
right,
expenses, as long as I make 4,000, I'm good. And do you
yeah.
take that from your reoccurring revenue, or how do you do it from your cash sales? How do you do it?
Well, we have money in our personal checking account. So I guess there was a couple months where I didn't really pay myself, and then recently I'm like, yeah, I should put some money in our checking account now. I mean, I I need to partition things a little bit better. I do have a multitude of accounts uh, because of the profit first system and because I want to set things up like that. But I haven't
Dive into
really.
that for me. What do you mean by profit first? I've
Oh,
never
okay.
heard
So
of that.
Profit First is a book. I can't remember the gentleman's name who wrote it, but I'm sure you can Google it real quick, or I can do it too. But Profit First, it's a great book, and it talks about taking your profit before your expenses. And so basically, the idea is this: money comes in to your main income account, and then you would distribute money to yourself. You would distribute money to your profit account as well, which is different than your pay. It's different than your owner's comp pay or your owner's comp account. And then you would distribute some money to taxes, and then you could distribute some money to savings. And there's a couple other different options. And in the book, there's outlined some basic guidelines for the percentages of what you need to put in each account. Now for land, it's going to be a little different. So Actually, one gentleman at one point emailed the author of Profit First, and he's a guy in the land business, and they discussed and came up with some different figures. And so I can't remember exactly what those were, but a lot of it was going back into the acquisition fund, basically. So yeah, long story short is the goal is eventually to nail down the percentages that feel right and then distribute those percentages. And then what's left over can be your operating expenses. Oftentimes, we think we need things that we don't. And so I think that's the main goal, is understanding you can make things work on a budget. If you don't have the money, you shouldn't spend it, because you don't want to spend your operating expenses first. And then at the end of the day, you're like, oh, where's my pay or where's my profit? Because that's not the goal of being a business owner. You don't want to own a business where you don't get paid. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people say, no, I need to reinvest in the business. I need to pour this money into the business. That's not a bad thing, but could you do it cheaper? And that's the question that you're forced to ask yourself when you're like, oh, I got $500 left for these operating expenses. Obviously, there's a lot of tailoring to your needs that needs to happen there for your specific business. But yeah, it's just good to kind of have, and all those are set up in separate accounts, by the way. So like I have an income checking account, operating expenses, tax savings, and then for my owner's compensation, I have just my checking account. So I just dump it into my checking account. Oh, and then obviously the profit account as well. So profit is different than your owner's compensation. So at the end of the year, you want to be like, yeah, I paid myself, I paid Uncle Sam, the bills are paid, and here's this chunk of money that we made as the company. And then out of that, you can give yourself a bonus, whatever you feel like you want to do.
That's awesome.
So to answer your question, what I've been doing lately is I'm just like, okay, I've been making some decent cash lately. I'm going to just put $4,000 a month or so into our checking account, because I've noticed that since I wasn't doing that, the checking account's going down. It usually was stable, but like we're spending more than's going into our personal checking account right now. So I'm like, yeah, I need to supplement that. I need to pay myself, in other words. So that's kind of what I've been doing lately. It's not an exact science yet. I think that as I figure more things out, figure out how to like tighten up these numbers and figure out what percentages I actually want, then I'll be able to tighten that up and get better at it. A lot of this, one challenge I've faced is everything is always so new and it's constantly evolving. So it makes it hard to really nail things down and say, this is what I'm going to make in a year. It hasn't even been a year yet. It's been 10 months.
Yeah.
I could say, okay, look, in the last 2 months, I made 25,000 in cash sales. I could do that and sort of extrapolate out like, okay, that means I should make roughly 120,000 a year, something like that. But there's just a lot of new things always, so it's hard to understand exactly what you're making until you've been doing it for a while. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that really does, because it's, I really like the way you're going about it, because it looks like you're trying to figure out, like, I'm a big fan of the 80-20 principle. And so it looks like you're looking for the key leverage points that you're like, okay, if I do this, this, and this, I'm winning, and that's good enough. And then just, so it's awesome. And yeah, I'm going to check out that book. It seems really interesting.
It's a great book.
A couple more questions before we jump off here. How do you feel about debt? Like, do you use debt in your business? Are you like extremely anti-debt? What's your take on debt? Is there ever a place for it?
The only debt that we have, I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey. I think he teaches smart things. And so, my wife's car is paid for. My truck is paid for. My truck is 18 years old. I'm going to keep driving it. I have a Jeep that's a 96 Jeep Cherokee. I'm going to keep driving that thing. So I like things to be paid for. And the only debt we have is for our house, which is totally reasonable. At one point I thought, wow, if I start making a ton of money in this business, I'll just pay the house off and we'll save like $200,000, in interest or whatever, maybe it's 100,000, something like that. But the problem with that is if you spend that money, you don't have that money to invest. And so if you can make more than 5.5%, which is our interest rate currently, if you can make more than that per year on that money, then you should do that. So I totally understand that. As far as buying new cars, things like that, we don't really do that. We're not we're not fans of debt at all. And so I don't think you need to go into debt for this business, because there's a lot of people out there with money who want to partner on deals and stuff.
Yes.
And so I mean, you can literally like make deals happen by bird dogging, by finding properties, by finding those deals and finding an investor who's interested in that. There have been people that have started off with actually like $0 in this business before. So that doesn't mean that it's easy. I mean, obviously, if you have $100,000 sitting in your bank account, you're going to be able to accelerate your business a lot more quickly. Now, I think you may learn a lot more by going slow, by bird dogging deals, by not just dumping all your money into random land. I guess that's what I was saying about the scalability thing earlier, just to kind of jump back to that, is you learn things along the way. So it may be smart to buy a property and then, sell that property and then try to buy another one and decide what you like. One thing I did is I bought a few properties that I realized a few months later, I don't really like this property. I wouldn't buy this again. It's not selling that fast. It's not going to make me very much money. Just not exciting. So, sorry, what was the question again? Let's get back to it. Let's bring it back.
No, so the question was just about debt. So like, what's your opinion about utilizing debt?
Yeah. So again, you don't really need to borrow money generally. Partner with somebody, or just find the deal for somebody. Maybe you can find the deal, do the work, sell the property, and just split it 50-50 or whatever you guys can agree to. So I wouldn't go into debt for anything other than maybe a house, personally.
Wow. That's such wise advice. And it's very, very countercultural in our day and age. But there's one guy that, everybody kind of puts this 4-hour work week lifestyle as like the bread and butter. It's like the cream of the crop of what you can develop for yourself, right? There's one guy that I know who's actually done it, and he's a staunch, like he spends like half the year traveling, and he's like a multimillionaire. He owns all these different businesses that he set on autopilot, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But his biggest thing is that he is extremely anti-debt. He's like, because he says what you don't factor in when you leverage is on paper, it might make sense. You might be able to justify it, but there's a lifestyle component. When something goes wrong, you're stressed out and you're stuck. Yeah. And if you want freedom, it's better to have less money in terms of scalability and have it paid off and have control over it.
So one thing that I always look at, because I think that there's usually something to learn, is look at the extremes of any situation or business or whatever. And one dude that is pretty extreme with the whole like living thriftily lifestyle, but also living a great lifestyle, is a guy that calls himself Mr. Money Mustache. I can't remember his real name, but he's been on Tim Ferriss, I think. But he was like a software engineer. He and his wife made a ton of money, and then they just put in like a 401k, and now they just chill and do whatever they want, and they do some work on the side. But they live a very free lifestyle because they're very thrifty. Like a guy like that with a couple $1,000,000 sitting in the bank, it'd be easy to go out and buy an expensive house. This dude I don't think he owns, no, he may own a car, but it's like a car that he paid less than 10 grand for. And, he rides his bike to work and things like that. So I think that living below your means is one of the best ways to get ahead. One more thing I want to throw out there as well is, I heard a statistic recently that on average, Asian people, or I think it was specifically Japanese people, save 50% of their money for retirement or for whatever. Europeans save like 30% or something like that. Americans on average save -1% of their income. That means they're spending more than they're making. And that's a really great way to be. You just owe your entire life
to somebody else
all the time.
All right, man. So final question for you. In terms of the future of your land business, are you looking to just go hardcore on terms and try to create passive income as much as possible? Or do you like the mix of both? What is your strategy for the future?
Generally speaking, I prefer cash. And so I've tried to price properties accordingly, and it seems to be working well. When I do a terms deal, it's a much higher price. And, I think that I'd really like to just do terms deals on properties that I really like, or really nice properties, because I may end up with them again. Other properties that I don't really think are that great, or that I may not want, I just try to sell them for cash. But I think it's good and healthy to have a mix. I think it is nice having that monthly income that's steady. So I'm not opposed to doing terms deals. I just anymore I don't want to play the long game of 100 down, 100 a month. I want to get the property paid for if I can on the down payment. So I want that to cover my costs there. So it's usually the high down, like medium monthly payment, or a medium down, high monthly payment type situation for me, where the money's coming in relatively quickly and it's not spread out too far. But it just seems like it's easier to accelerate this business and grow that chunk of money by selling for cash at this point. Basically, when you're doing terms deals, you become a lender. And usually banks are lenders because they got a ton of money and they only need to make a few percentage points on it. So, I don't have time to wait for the money to come in sometimes, and I need that cash to reinvest and buy more property. So it seems like it's just better for me to, even if I make as little as 25 or 50% on a property at times, it's money that's coming in that I have right now. The deal is done. It's way less work than a terms deal, because right now I have a couple people that they consistently forget to pay, or their account's messed up, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Oh yeah, we'll take care of it. And they do, but I just don't like having to deal with that.
Yeah, man. No, that makes sense. And it's something that I hear pretty frequent. Having kind of a mix of both is kind of the best case scenario. So, well,
Yeah.
Chris, thank you so much for your time. I really,
No
really
problem, man.
appreciate it. And
Yeah.
best of luck to you. Keep me posted on your journey.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks.